It's my nerd world, and welcome to it, a Depeche Mode podcast. There is something really unique, and I'll share it with you in just a moment, that happens with this podcast. Because I have not been consistent in doing the podcast, and I fully realize that's the case, and I'll get into a little bit more details as we dive into the content this week. But today, as I sat down to do the notes and put together the show for this week, I started getting some emails from people. It just happened. Like they knew, like you knew I was going to do another Depeche Mode podcast. So we're going to get into that. Got a lot of great listener feedback this week. The big news, though, and what we'll be talking about for a Depeche Mode podcast today is the fact that the greatest band on the face of the earth, at least in my opinion, and art is subjective, Depeche Mode, was finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And boy, did they ever deserve it.
My Nerd World.
It is My Nerd World, the Depeche Mode podcast, and I am your host, Jon Justice. Live from the world we live in and life in general. I'm glad you're with the show this week, and my apologies, too, for those that who have been listening to the show, who have found the show, and would like me to do shows a little bit more often than I do. I know that in order for a show to be successful, any podcast, you got to be consistent about it. I am consistent with my weekly Star Wars podcast. That's the one that I go to every single week. I'd like to be more consistent with my Depeche Mode podcast, but unfortunately time doesn't permit, and I usually find myself doing episodes now that we've gone through the complete re-listen to and sort of examining of the vast majority of the catalog, and I still have some ideas of things that we'll do in the future. The way that I've been handling the podcast has been to go and record a podcast when we have things to talk about, and we have something to talk about, and that's the fact that Depeche Mode got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I actually have the audio. I'll be sharing that with you in just a moment of Martin Gore, Andrew Fletcher, and Dave Gahan accepting their award via Zoom because of this ridiculous pandemic COVID world that we live in. Got a couple of comments to make just about going back and listening to the band and a little bit of what's going on in the world right now. I'm not going to be getting into politics, but what I am going to talk about is how relevant Depeche Mode's music is, and how you move throughout the years, and I've talked about this on several other podcasts, you move throughout the years of Depeche Mode, and because of the ambiguity that Martin Gore infuses into his songwriting, and to a lesser extent Dave Gahan, it really does provide the opportunity for me as a listener, for you as a listener, to take songs that Depeche Mode created years ago, even decades ago, and apply it to modern times, especially when it comes to politics. Because usually, these are songs, various, songs of pain and suffering in various tempos. Usually it has to do with, a lot of things surrounding love, a lot of stuff surrounding drug abuse that Dave has written about before. But there is that sort of political and lifestyle bend that Depeche Mode also has. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we have a lot of listener feedback, and this is what I wanted to share with you. It's really interesting to me because even though I don't record the podcast as consistently as I'd like, I get this smattering, this trickling in of emails from you writing to TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. And as I'm not kidding, as I was sitting down doing the notes for the show this week, I got another fantastic email from somebody out of the blue, and it was just perfect timing. So I just copied it from my email and put it into my notes for this week because somebody had written, it was if you knew. It was like you knew that I was going to be recording a Depeche Mode podcast this week. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. Depeche Mode was inducted just a couple of weeks back into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I couldn't for the life of me find the audio for actress Charlize Theron, who introduced the band. I do have the band and their comments, and I'll play that for you in just a moment. But this is the speech that Charlize Theron gave before the band went and accepted their award and their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Of course, I think we're all disappointed because we had all... Sorry, my voice got a little scratchy there. I think we had all hoped we would have been able to see the band perform, right? And the possibility of what could have happened with that. I don't know if Alan Wilder would have come up on stage and joined them or not, or Vince Clarke would have, but I know that it was a bummer for all of us fans because we really would have liked to have seen the band perform, but unfortunately, again, because of this COVID pandemic world that we live in, that's just not possible. So, this is the speech that Charlize Theron gave. I have the transcript here. Depeche Mode is the soundtrack of my adolescence. I'm not kidding. There was literally a song for every occasion of my life. Doesn't this echo all of us, right? I mean, she really does lay out the genius of this band. And even to this day, when I listen to Depeche Mode every day in some way, shape, or form, and especially it's part of the list of songs that I put together when I go to bed every night. And, there's a Depeche Mode song in there somewhere, if not the vast majority of them. There really still is not any band that was able to go do what they were do. Was able to go do what they do. They are so unique and special in that way. All right, I'm gonna wipe out if I don't just read through her speech here. So let me go ahead and read it in its entirety. My first date, my first time leaving South Africa, and of course the first time my heart got broken. And so when I finally got to see them live a couple of years ago, it was like this epic slap in the face of nostalgia. But more than that, when I was at the show, I realized what else I loved about their music. They celebrate the outsider. Their music brings people together from all different walks of life and makes them feel like it's okay to be different. That really hit me watching the videos at the concert. I was moved to tears. I came home and told my daughters about it, and I was also really effing pissed because I don't usually go to rock concerts to bawl my eyes out. But truthfully, it speaks to the immense power Depeche Mode has had over the years. It is why, when I got the chance to pick some songs for the Atomic Blonde soundtrack, they were the first on my list. It's no surprise that they are joining the ranks of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They should have been there 20 years ago if it was up to me. But what an incredibly well-deserved honor. Thank you guys for being the soundtrack to my life. And look, she nailed it. I get goosebumps just reading what it is that she wrote. There's a timeless quality to this band. And there will always be a timeless quality to this band. We're not going to have Depeche Mode forever. And for those of us that have grown up with this band, for me, it was the first band that I was ever a fan of. Very much in the same vein of Star Wars being the first thing that I was ever a fan of at all at the age of 5. Hearing Shake the Disease on the radio back in the early 80s, it was just unlike anything that I'd ever heard before. And it still carries the same kind of weight and resonates with me the same way that it did, all those decades ago. But so does the vast majority of their music. As a matter of fact, somebody had posted, I don't know if it was a YouTube video or an article or what it was, but somebody had posted an image with reference to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Depeche Mode's induction into it. And they had tagged it with "Now This Is Fun." And that was a song that I had not thought about, I don't know how long. And I immediately went and grabbed it and added a whole bunch of songs to the numerous Depeche Mode playlists that I have in my iTunes. And just hearing the opening, tinkling of the keyboards, and dun 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 dun, and the voice in the background. It just, and then it gets going in that rhythm. It's older, right? It's classic Depeche Mode, but it still is just Depeche Mode to its core. I forgot how much I love that song and the early works of the band that still brings about these amazing feelings of nostalgia. The entire catalog does that. For me, and I know for you listening, it really has been, and just like it was for Charlize Theron, it was the soundtrack to our lives and continues to be the soundtrack to our lives. Depeche Mode, even as a 48-year-old nerd, is still a friend that I can lean on in those times of trouble when I need, something to ease my pain. Depeche Mode would always be there for me. Or if I just want to feel good and listen to a Depeche Mode song like Now This Is Fun, to get those nostalgic vibes that never go away. It just feels absolutely amazing. I find it funny Because Depeche Mode has always been a bit of an outsider, as Charlize Theron said. They celebrate the outsider because they themselves are outsiders. So it almost seems serendipitous that Depeche Mode would be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the middle of a pandemic, right? That there would be this oddity, this footnote, this asterisk next to that, where all these other bands that are relatively more well-known and well-accepted, here you have this, for lack of a better word, quirky band that, started off as kind of a pop band, wasn't really accepted in their, in the region of which they came from, that grew to this monolithic cult status. And yet, after all these years, they get inducted into the most prestigious thing a band can get inducted into, and they have to do it via Skype. You know what? I almost think it's perfect that that's the way that it happened, because it makes the most sense, right? All right, so for those that haven't had the opportunity or just want to revisit, this is Dave Gahan, Martin Gore, and Andrew Fletcher accepting their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
All right, congratulations, boys. We finally found a way to accept our induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Congratulations.
It's a shame not doing the concert.
Aren't we doing the concert now?
Yeah. Reach out and touch. No, we're not doing that. But still, it's an honour, of course, to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I am reading notes here, by the way. Congratulations to all our fellow inductees. It's incredible now to be in this club. There's so many other musicians, artists that are part of this that we have grown up listening to. David Bowie, Iggy Pop and the Stooges, The Clash, just to name a few.
The Eagles.
Yeah, don't forget the Eagles. Everybody loves the Eagles.
The Eagles.
Let's not forget, we got a big congratulations, of course, to Vince Clarke and, of course, to Alan Wilder, who are part of the DM family and DM history.
Thanks,
and, of course, the success of this band.
Thanks, Alan.
We've been doing this most of our adult lives, pretty much. I guess we were 18, 19 when we started doing this. And, of course, I want to thank Martin and Fletch while I got the opportunity.
Thanks, Dave.
Because I don't know what the hell I would have been doing if I didn't find music, to be quite honest.
You'd have been still stealing cars, Dave.
Yeah, maybe I would have moved on a bit from there. Let's hope I would have been stealing larger things than cars.
Let's hope so.
Definitely something dodgy. I mean, music saved us, in more ways than one.
Absolutely, yeah, and thanks to you as well. We wouldn't be here either.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. We're growing up, listening to music on the radio and having music to listen, it really kind of helped us to feel normal and feel part of something, and that's what music does for people. And I think that's what Depeche Mode has done for many people. I think music really brings people together, and God knows we need that more today than it seems any other time. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to perform for you tonight, of course, because of this situation we find all of ourselves in. But I want to thank some special people here who have supported us and believed in us. Of course, Daniel Miller and Mute Records, who found us and believed in us, and he continues to be a source of guidance to this day. Anton Corbin, who, thank God, came in at the right time and actually made us look cool. Jonathan Kessler, our manager, of course, and spiritual advisor. All of the promoters across the world that took a chance on a bunch of outsider, eyeliner-wearing weirdos from Essex, and all of the wankers that didn't. I also want to thank Peter Gaudino and Christian Eigner, who have been such a huge part of this band for the last 20 years. And we're still calling them the New Blokes. Let's not forget as well all our road crew,
John Botty,
tour managers, all of them that have worked tirelessly to bring the Depeche Mode show to life every night. Rob Stringer at Sony, who continues to support our artistic vision. And, of course, all of the fans, a lot of which that have been with us from day one. And of course, last but not least, a big thank you to our families, our wives, our kids, our parents, who put up with us and have been with us throughout this journey. And I think I speak for all of us when I say we love you and we couldn't do it without you.
Yes, absolutely.
And,
Thank you. Well done.
So, Mark, you better get back to your kids in the studio. Fletch, it's opening time. You better get
To the pub.
talk to you guys soon. Love you.
All right.
See ya.
Cheers.
My nerd world.
So is it just me, or do you get this? You get the sense they still don't understand the gravity of how important they are to so many people. It brings me so much joy that after all these years, to see these three gentlemen who have provided us with so much joy, more than joy, right? Just for decades, seeing them so happy, and so I'm going to use the word again, so joyful. I was excited to hear him talk about Into the Studio there, Martin. And I think we all, at this point in time, the band hasn't officially broken up, and I think we're all expecting they'll be creating music again sometime in the very near future. By the way, having followed this band for all these years, I don't recall Dave ever referring to them as DM, as the initials. That stuck out to me. I could be wrong, right? I've watched countless interviews, but to hear him refer to the band as DM, I just thought that was interesting. I don't know. I listened to that and watched their acceptance conversation there a couple of times, and this was the first time just listening to the audio that I kind of zeroed in on that. That was interesting. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. It's just great to see them happy. Obviously they're all getting on. None of them are getting any younger, but the music is still fantastic, and I can't wait to see whatever it is that they'll be putting out for the next batch of for the next album. I'm excited to see what it is they're going to do, especially after Spirit, because Spirit was very much a departure from the last several albums. And while it doesn't land on my all-time favorite Depeche Mode albums, there are many songs on that album that I really do enjoy. And it really does get into what I mentioned before at the beginning of the show, and that is, an album like Spirit, regardless of what your political leanings are, suddenly has new life and meaning. When you look at a song like Where's the Revolution or The Worst Crime, especially with what's been going on here in America, even today, that word that I continue to use because it works and it's the right word, that ambiguity, how ambiguous the lyrics of the band are, and how Martin has always been very keen to not reveal exactly what any particular song is about, because he wants the listener to enjoy the song and have it take on meaning specifically for them. And Dave had said something very similar in the past many times about how when he sings the songs that, he finds his own things to relate to bring out within the song, sort of meaning for him. And I think it's very much in the same vein of what we as fans do. So I love the fact that depending on the year and depending on what's happening in life, you can find a Depeche Mode song to go along with it and to theme whatever it is that you're dealing with. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com is the email address. A couple of these emails I've actually been sitting on for a while, so my apologies for not getting back to you sooner. But let's start here. Mitzi writes this, and this was in response to a Depeche Mode podcast that I did talking about how Depeche Mode was finally going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so it only seems fitting that I share it on this particular episode. And Mitzi writes this: "It's about damn time. Everyone on Earth loves Depeche Mode. Even people that barely know about the music. Even young people. Good Lord. How do The Cure get in before Depeche Mode? No offense. Martin Gore and Vince Clarke basically invented the electronica music craze that we still use to this day to make every type of music, and they did it old school." And she's right. look, it's subjective, and art is subjective. And I've had people push back on me saying that, Kraftwerk was more influential because Kraftwerk essentially went and inspired Depeche Mode. And I don't disagree with that. But when you talk about the popularity and the influence of Depeche Mode, certainly Depeche Mode has done a lot more to influence modern music than the bands that ended up ultimately influencing Depeche Mode when they got started. All right, let's go to Mike. Mike writes this. I actually found your DM podcast a few months ago, and I'm almost caught up, started from the beginning. We have similar backstories with loving the band. I moved to Orange County and lived there 84 through 88, class of 89, and I got my modern music taste from K-Rock. I had tickets to the Rose Bowl show, but moved to Florida literally the day before the show. Wasn't meant to be. However, I really appreciate the fact that they made a double record soundtrack and movie so that I could see what I missed. Yeah, man, boy, and that double record release of 101, I still remember driving through in my beat up 65 Volkswagen Squareback that I had lowered, that I was trying to customize, but I never finished with my it was a decent stereo system for the day, but I remember driving around Newport Beach in that area, going to high school around there, listening nonstop to that double album or cassette. Mike goes on to say, anyways, love your podcast. Hope you keep cranking them out. Dangerous and beautiful, the radio transmission that I have to know. He also goes by Stu242. And that's actually how we ended up communicating, because he had emailed me on something and made a reference to the 242, and I realized that it was because he was a front 242 fan, as am I, and that was the reference to which he was talking about. All right, let's see. We're gonna go to. Oh my God! And did I not write down who wrote this to me? I guess I didn't. I apologize. I just heard about the podcast for the first time today, and I'm an instant fan. And my apologies for not writing down who this, or maybe this was Stu. My bad. So this might have been Stu. I'm sorry. I cut and pasted from my email. I have a whole process that I go through when I put my notes together, and sometimes it screws me up because I cut and paste, and then it doesn't end up matching with the actual email. So Stu, if this isn't you or Mike, and I don't know who this is, I apologize. But, never mind. Gosh. Boy, this is really bad podcasting, can I tell you? I don't edit these. I'm a full-time radio show host Monday through Friday, right? Work for a news talk station. So I just prefer to do the shows live and don't edit them, because that's just how I do the radio show. So I just record the podcast as if I was doing them live. So unfortunately, when I do that, I make mistakes like this. I actually do know who wrote me this email. This is what they had to say. My apologies for the lengthy diversion. I heard the podcast for the first time today. I'm an instant fan. Thank you. I build cars, and as a designer, I can't say that I've ever been more influenced by a band, and not even known I was, because I'm heavy into motorcycle and car culture now, and Depeche Mode did a lot for that. Who doesn't remember the Vespas, right, from the videos, and the Isettas, and I have to apologize, I'm not familiar with that term. Is that the three-wheeled car from the Never Let Me Down video? Maybe it is. All right, so I love a follow on Instagram, and this particular individual goes by this, Pinakajoadder. Pinakajoadder. Not even going to try to pronounce that because I know that I would butcher it, but thank you so much for the email there, and my apologies for not giving your name a crack. I'm sorry about that. All right, Rocky writes this. I just discovered your podcast on YouTube discussing Depeche Mode. I've always proclaimed myself the biggest DM fan of all time, so it was refreshing to hear how much of an authentic fan you are, and how you just might be even bigger than me, though that's debatable. As a movie director, hey, do you like sci-fi? There's this fantastic group of stories called EMBARK. The hero in the book, his name is Taft, and he's a big Depeche Mode fan. And the first book is filled with Depeche Mode references. That's actually true. Anyway, as a movie director, they have really inspired me through my journey in both filmmaking and in life. We were both at the legendary concert for the masses at the Rose Bowl. You mentioned you were 15. I had just turned 15 myself, and it was my very first concert. I was already a casual fan of the band, having heard Catching Up With. My first cassette I bought was Some Great Reward, but it was the Rose Bowl concert that converted me into a lifelong DM fan. I've seen them live as many times, but I have never met them. I did meet and got to know the Brat. Yep. Back in the day, and got some cool bootlegs from him. And the Brat was the guy, and he still is. Gosh, I forgot his name now, his full name. Anyway, he's been in charge of Depeche Mode PR at various levels for a long, long time. The coolest moment ever was when I visited the recording studio in Santa Barbara a few years ago, as seen on the Sounds of the Universe box set DVD. To stand in the very room that they recorded some of their albums was almost too much to handle. Yeah, man, I can't imagine. That would definitely be on my bucket list of things to do, to be able to go into a studio where Depeche Mode actually recorded. What I really like about your fandom is that you discuss their more current albums, whereas most fans I come across are stuck in the Violator Songs of Faith and Devotion era and only discuss those. I love all the DM albums and have my favorites and least favorites, but I love their new material just as much as their old stuff. I remember not really liking Delta Machine the first time I heard it. I recently went back to it, listening with headphones on, and it was like a completely different album. I absolutely love it now. Like you, I first heard the then new songs on the Letterman show and got the chills when Should Be Higher first played. That song, Broken and Alone, are at the top for me on that album. Yeah, me too. I also think I like Sounds of the Universe more than the typical fan. I do as well. There are so many things you've mentioned that I relate to with this band, so I just had to reach out and tell you that I'm really enjoying your DM series. In closing, and you probably already know this, but Brat has posted the actual K-Rock broadcast from the Rose Bowl and the Warehouse Records events, among other great interviews, under the archived audio area on the official website. I downloaded all of them and played them in the car from time to time. Nothing takes you back to those times than listening to these. Anyway, take care and best regards, Rocky. This is why I love doing the podcast, and I hope that I can do it more often than I have been. But it's hearing from you guys, the fan, because this is why I ended up doing it, and then seeing different individuals gravitate towards different parts of the band in different ways. And Rocky was the email that I was referring to earlier, that just kind of came up out of the blue in the middle of when I was doing notes for the show. It was almost like it was meant to be. All right, that wraps up the show this week. Thank you so much for checking it out. I really do hope that you continue to enjoy it. And if it's your first time listening, go back. I've been doing the show now for several years, even though it's been off and on for the past few years. And there's a lot of little stories that I've told, including, the story that he mentioned there of really having his Depeche Mode fandom cemented when he went to go see 101. There's a story that I have of a buddy of mine who came to my apartment one night, and he'd always been sort of a classic rock fan, was a big fan of the Doors, didn't really know much of Depeche Mode. And we sat down one night and got our drink on, for lack of a better word, and I made him watch the VHS tape that I had of Devotional on my little 19-inch TV. And I know that he was hooked as a fan, was hooked and became a fan ever since watching that. And I think we all, in some way, shape, or form, have those stories. Before I wrap up, I do want to mention that I do write science fiction space opera novels. The story that I told there a moment ago of having a character in my EMBARK series that is a Depeche Mode fan is absolutely true. And the first book in the series, EMBARK Book 1, is filled with Depeche Mode references. There is a Depeche Mode reference in every single one of the books, but the first book really has the most of them. If you've listened to previous shows, you've heard me talk about this before. If you haven't and it's new to you, I would like to encourage you to please go and check out my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK. It's an exciting mix of Fast and the Furious, Star Wars, Ready Player One, with a lot of pop culture references in the same vein of Ready Player One, from that time of my youth until modern day, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And to the guy that works on cars, man, the whole point of the story and the universe that I created, the initial idea was, what would the world be like in the future if we had air and space flight culture replace our modern day car culture? where you didn't have customized vehicles, but you had customized flying crafts. That's where the story idea came from, and then building on that to create a Star Wars style adventure set in reality with fantastical tech here on Earth. You can go to mynerdworld.net for more details about the books, or just go to Amazon.com and check out the books for yourself. The ebooks are $2.99. That gets you a big discount on the audiobooks, narrated and produced by me. Paperbacks are $11.99, and the audiobook, if you just pay for it outright, I think is around $21, something like that. So EMBARK Book 1, Book 2, Treasure in Darkness, and Book 3, The Vanishing War. Book 4 is coming out within the next couple of months, and I am already finished with the book with the first draft on Book 5. So if you're a Depeche Mode fan and a reader and like sci-fi, definitely go and check out EMBARK. All right, I'm done pimping my books. Have yourself a fantastic week. I hope you are safe wherever you are, and don't know when the next show will be, but there will be another show sometime in the near future. Until then, take care of yourself, and thank you so much for listening to the show. I really do hope you enjoyed it.
My Nerd World.